Okay, this is Texas Obscurities by E.R. Bills. And this is from 2013. And my dear mother-in-law got this for me for Christmas. And she is well aware of my book addiction. So rather than try to stifle it, she just threw more fuel on the fire. So this is a compilation of weird stories and trivia and stuff from around the fine state of Texas. Interesting book. I immediately, this is one like as soon as I opened this Christmas morning, I was immediately sucked into it. This is a great just overview of a lot of weird, obscure Texas history. And one of the things, and I had seen this before, but they actually have a really good discussion of this, and that is the little alien dude in Aurora, Texas. So on page 45, they have the Aurora, the whole thing about the Aurora crash, and that was allegedly a little a spaceship or an airship, as they referred to it at the time, crashed into a windmill and allegedly had a little pilot on board that was smaller than a regular human. And there's differing accounts as to whether or not he was dead or alive when they found him, but he died, and they had a Christian burial for him, as they say in the Dallas Morning News article. And he was allegedly buried in the cemetery in Aurora, Texas. And this was widely reported. The Dallas Morning News had a story. I think there was the local paper might have carried it. It was kind of big news at the time. And they do a good job in this of discussing whether or not this could be a hoax or if there's any truth to it. And they go on to discuss the wave of airship sightings across the country during that time. They have a whole section called Heavenly Inspectors, and it's all about these multiple airship sightings around Texas and other areas. So that alone is worth getting this book. If you're unaware of that whole saga in Aurora, Texas, it's worth looking into. And at the end of this video, I'll link to that. I recently passed through Aurora and stopped and went to the cemetery and all. And they do a good job of explaining some of the history there. There's rumors that somebody in the early 70s, possibly a government agency, went and exhumed this little dude out of that graveyard, and his headstone is now missing. People had taken metal detectors by the grave, and whatever was in there in the early 70s, one day just suddenly wasn't there anymore. So there's a lot of weirdness about that. But anyway, beyond the Aurora thing, if you're not necessarily into the whole UFO angle, there's a lot of other stuff. One of the other really disturbing cases is a Catholic priest, and is pictured here on the cover, who was tarred and feathered. And the reason he was tarred and feathered is really troubling, because he was seen as disloyal during World War I. And he was a German, I think he was of German extract or German heritage. And because he would not speak negatively about the Kaiser or whatever, I forget the whole deal there, but that he was basically taken outside town and tarred and feathered and severely injured by that, and then had to basically flee the state to recuperate. So he did live, but the troubling thing is, like with now, like we have now, this very polarized attitude about all kinds of subjects like Ukraine and Trump and January 6th and all that sort of thing. And people are so polarized. And the thing that really jumped out at me about that particular story about the priest is, you think that happened in an era where people were getting their information from really just two sources. Either radio, very early days of radio, but more specifically print media by way of newspapers. So the town of Slayton was stirred up against this guy by means of newspaper articles more than anything else. And the troubling thing with this now is, you think, wow, that happened in an era where people were reading newspaper articles, really, and that was it. And that stirred people to this kind of violent action against this dude for when you read this about it, you really feel bad for this guy. He just seemed like a decent guy that was just trying to give everybody a fair hearing. He was not any kind of German spy or anything like that. And the war propaganda was such that he became a target for it. And the scary thing about that is now, with social media being what it is and it being so easy to turn those that mass media weapon against a person or a group of persons is really terrifying to think. If it could be done that effectively against this dude in like 1914 or so, I can only imagine. I mean, obviously we've seen examples of it today, but I think we have yet to see it really turned up full blast like it could be. And this was a frightening reminder of just what is possible when you use mass media to really play on hysteria. And again, we've seen some of that. We've seen that in the Second Gulf War. We saw a lot of that recently with COVID and things like that. But I think that if push really came to shove, I think we could see some really ugly things happen that would make this look like a picnic. So I don't think that his intention was in putting that in there was what I'm getting from it. But reading that account, it's very much, I took it as kind of a warning about just how insane people can get if they suspect you of being disloyal. So anyway, Texas Obscurities, lots of good stuff. This is one of those, I love books like this for when I'm traveling, when I have just a few minutes here and there to read, because it's broken down into articles. And just, of course, being in Texas, there's Lake Worth monsters in here. There's lots of good articles on a lot of variety of subjects. So great book to have handy, especially if you're a Texas resident.